Okay, kitty cat. Let me know if my sound is good. Um, Sorry about the tank top. It's I drink coffee in the morning, and coffee makes me sweat. And it's gross. I didn't even realize that's what was happening until I had this hiking guide tell me once that he had that experience, and I was like, "Oh, that maps." Whatever. I have to wear a tank top because it's disgusting. Um, I felt I felt fairly inspired this morning from um I shared with some friends recently this George MacDonald tweet. Because George MacDonald is alive and well and he's tweeting. What up, Foxman? Good to see you, buddy. And the George MacDonald tweet is this. Let's share the screen. He says a Christian. Is this working? Yeah. A Christian is just one that does what the Lord Jesus tells him. Neither more nor less than that makes a Christian. And I was like, love it. That's great. I think that's right. And George MacDonald he has this ability to say things that are very profound and technically correct in a very simple and succinct way. And it's a huge gifting. He so again, a Christian here. I should just I'll put it. Let me do it this way. I will post the comment. So this is George MacDonald. So I put it in the chat, but I'm also going to put it up on the screen. A Christian is just one that does what the Lord Jesus tells him, neither more nor less than that makes a Christian. And I think it was Sam, because Sam's going to come in this conversation. Because I think he's in the chat that I posted this, and he said, "Oh, that's like PVK's definition of a Christian," and I said, "I don't think so. I don't think it is." Because I don't like PVK's definition of a Christian, and I like this one, and so that's kind of the impetus for this video, because I think it's very illustrative, and I hopefully can talk about and articulate why I think they're different and why I like George MacDonald's and not PVK's. So correct me if I'm wrong, for the people that know and want to defend the honor of our sweet PVK. But PVK, his definition of a Christian, I believe, is a Christian is someone who trusts Jesus more than they trust themselves. I think. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. I love you. Jason said he likes my hair, and the reason I got a haircut is because pseudo VK? Yeah, pseudo Vanderclay. I had to get my hair cut. Well, I didn't have to, but my wife was telling me, my wife has, I think both of us have the ability to give each other indirect compliments that are also slightly put downs. And so she said something to me like, she will say things sometimes. She was saying a combination of my hair. I have very thin and fine hair. And then I'm getting older, and so you can see the crown, the sweet crown on my head. I don't know if I'm balding, but it's thin, and that happens when people get older. But also, part of it's just really fine hair. My daughter has similar hair. My dad has similar hair. There's not really pattern baldness in my family. But but anyhow, when my hair was getting longer, I had like longer hair in the back. It was getting longer on top. And sometimes it would just look gross. And my wife was like, and I have this leather jacket that I'll wear sometimes, not because I like leather jackets. I think sometimes they can look sweet. This one doesn't really. but I'm also a frugal person, and I have very high standards of buying things. Is like they need to be ethical, they need to be quality, they need to be made with love. I don't like fast fashion and low quality things, and so I'm kind of a buy it for life person. And I'll maybe bring the mustache back. John, we'll see. And so she said the combination of my hair with the leather jacket, she said, is just not a good look. And then she said, this is the backhanded compliment, that she's like, thank God that I'm attracted to you enough that despite all the things that you're doing to yourself, uh, I still am attracted to you. So she was basically just like saying I look gross and ugly, but underneath that, I'm attractive enough to her to make it work. And I was like, well, that's thank you. Okay, back to PVK. The tangent is over. And so PVK's definition, I think it's right. Foxman, I know you're here. Almond I know you're here. You maybe don't know this, John, whoever's here, is that definition of PVK is a Christian is someone who trusts Jesus more than they trust themselves. Here's my beef with that conversation. Yeah, Paul, you're here. Is that your definition of a Christian? This is how I'll illustrate why I like George MacDonald's and why I don't like PBKs. Coleridge has this line that I love, and it's very tied to my understanding of almost everything: non-dualism, the Trinity, a personalist ontology. That's probably the better way to say it. Instead of relational ontology, let's just say a personalist ontology. The person is the nexus and the locus of all meaning and of being itself. How about that? Is Coleridge, the philosopher's privilege is to make distinctions without division, which is maintaining unity and multiplicity, distinguishing but not dividing. So George MacDonald's definition and understanding has no division. I would say PVK's does. It has divided man stuff in it, because a Christian is someone who trusts God more than they trust themselves. That's an either or. And I don't think that's valid, because, to quote John Calvin, which PVK, I know you got this from me, by the way. You've probably read Institutes, but I used to quote this. This is one of my go-to quotes that I've quoted a lot. And I didn't used to like to tell people where it came from, because I don't like to soil their interpretation of it. But where are you, quote? I've almost gotten to the point where I can, by my screenshots, I can like imagine and see the quote, because I know what it is, but I'm not doing that right now. This is where, if I was Grimm or someone, I would do branding or PVK now. But I think my branding is not branding. Okay, so here's a quote. Without knowledge of self, there is no knowledge of God. Our wisdom, insofar as it ought to be deemed true and solid wisdom, consists almost entirely of two parts: the knowledge of God and of ourselves. But as these are connected by many ties, it is not easy to determine which of the two precedes and gives birth to the other. Now, again, with Coleridge, the distinction and not the division. I like that quote because it's saying we can't tell where the two come from in either. Think about this: quantum states, quantum indeterminacy, which precedes the other, double slit experiment. When it comes to the person and God, which gives rise and gives birth to the other? And I think this is part of what I call the radical implications of the incarnation. You can never divide those things. You can't divide which. You can talk about in an abstract way and not in a linear causative way, because we don't understand causation. You can talk about like logical preeminence, perhaps, and logical priority. So you could say this is like the per se, per accidens causation thing. You could say that God is logically prior to the Son, or you could say God is logically prior to the man, to the person, or you could say, so So, like, trusting God more than, you can't divide those things because this is the hard problem of all perception. Your trust of God manifests in you. It doesn't exist outside of you. That's the radical implications of the incarnation. You can't fully divide those things. You can distinguish, but not divide. And George MacDonald's quote, again, to read it, let's go back. Right. Oh, it's on the thing. A Christian is just one that does what the Lord Jesus tells him. Neither more nor less than that makes him a Christian. Guess what that is? That's act as if. That is how you manifest yourself in the world, to obey what the Lord Jesus tells them. Now, where does the Lord Jesus tell you things to obey? Receive with meekness the implanted word. This is what I was talking about in the last live stream. This is the Martin Luther or the Jobian integrity or the whatever. To obey God and to deny your conscience is to not obey God. This is the false distinction between authenticity and sincerity culture. T-Grog, you're coming in here and you're distracting everyone with your atheist polemics, and no one's listening to what I'm saying because you're trying to prove Christianity. Yeah, exactly. Paul, you don't even have to tell me you're not going to clip this. I know that. I'll wait until David Busatil or someone else comes on and you can clip them. However, the stuff that I'm saying I think is solid. It's solid in the sense that it's not solid. It's solid like it's walking on water. So that's one thing. How I want to tie in. Yeah, don't apologize to me. I'm your nemesis. So I also want to talk about this Ashley. I can't remember how Sam pronounced it. Ashley Lande conversation from Sam. It was fantastic. See, here's shorts. See, this is what I watch. You can see my stuff on my YouTube stuff. So Sam is talking to this girl that has what's it called? Like girl boss glasses. Look at those. That's what I'll say. Girl boss. Is girl boss still cool? I don't know. And then it's just food shorts. That's how I like to roll. But this conversation was fantastic. And there's a couple things in it though that relate to this conversation. So let's go find them. Let's go find my comments because this is all about me. And if PVK is not going to highlight me, I'll highlight myself. So how about that? So at the end, this is funny. This happens constantly with Sam, and like we can't get enough of just praising Sam and how insightful and smart and brilliant he is, right? However, let's remember, I also think Sam is a good person. And what's more valuable, being smart or being good? Eric Weinstein, the Weinsteins, all these people, like we want the smart people in positions of power, right? Do you? Is it good? Is it good for human flourishing to have smart people in positions of power? I think it's good for human flourishing to have good people in positions of authority. How about let's say that way? However, she said at the end, she just talked about Sam's ability to have good insights and put good words to things because she would say something and then Sam would repeat it back in his own words, which is very much that Tim Keller quote from the Gospel Coalition and clip that I love to play is not so much that they're interlocutors and debating, but Tim Keller, it's in How to Disagree. They're not disagreeing, but Sam has a keen ability to do this when he's disagreeing with someone. So Gavin Ortland, if you listen to this, you should talk to Sam and have a conversation with him instead of playing weird cat and mouse games via text. Just have a conversation with him, okay? Just do it. You might learn something, maybe. Jordan Peterson. Maybe when you talk to someone, you'll maybe actually learn things, and you don't just need to correct Sam to your understanding of the Trinity. I like to talk to Sam. We still disagree. We've had many conversations about the Trinity. It's okay. It's a brave space, as Hezi likes to say. So anyhow, she says this, and she would say something. Sam would repeat it back to her, and she's like, and you could just tell it was very much like, I don't know. I feel like Sam's done that a number of times with people, especially when he's talking to like high level intellectuals, and Sam will repeat back to them what they're saying in his own words or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, that's really good, or even better. That's what Tim Keller says you should do when you disagree with people, is you should state their position in a way where they're like, not only is that what I think, it's better than I could have even said it. Sam is super gifted at it. Good for you, Sam. But then the piece I want to bring in is there were a couple points in here. So they were a lot of it's about psychedelics. She's all about psychedelics, and they would talk about getting high on psychedelics or weed or anything else, and you would have these things that you just thought were super profound, and like the universe opens up to you and it's amazing and wonderful, and you're just like, wow, it's so cool. And then you'd come off of it, the drug, and like all that's gone, and you're like, well, that I don't see that anymore, or it's dumb, or wow, that's weird. Or Sam used the illustration of being the sober one in the room when everybody else is high, and they're like laughing hysterically about something, and he's like, this is not funny. Okay, here's the thing. Distinction without division. And I would say, but if the incarnation is true, isn't everything not profound? Isn't it both profound and not profound? This is the Christo logic of Jordan Daniel Wood and Maximus, the whole mystery of Christ. If and then so they talk about that profundity of drugs, and one other thing, and tarot. They talk about tarot in there too, and just saying, and they talk about it in a way that is very. It's not a distinction without a division. It's very divided. It's very divided man stuff. They're like, it's profound, it's not profound, or tarot is good or bad. Okay, number one, go watch the whole Grail Country meditations on the tarot thing, because this is a thing. Like, here's a prediction for you. It's already happening. Jonathan Peugeot is already reading Meditations on the Road, tarot. Jordan Hall is. PVK might end up reading it sometime. This is the problem with a rigorous, radical, conservative impulse to things where you want to categorize things as good or bad in a binary way. You might miss the grace that comes to you through the unexpected, through the unseen, through the truth outside the truth you currently apprehend. You know, and it's also very divided man. If you are in divided man, either or mode, I would argue that at least intellectually you don't understand the incarnation, because you don't understand that you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Is tarot bad? Do psychedelics show you something that's profound? Listen, it's not a yes or a no, because what you see and hear depends a lot upon where you're standing. It also depends upon the kind of person you are. Okay, now I want to read this part from this book. Am I going to remember the page? This is my current book club book. Jason will know about this. I've been talking to him about it because this is a J.F. Martel recommendation, and J.F. Martel is a stud. It's a crazy book. Apparently, C.S. Lewis read it. Well, I'll read the first part of this. Okay, so I'll just read to you the first page of the introduction. And also, this guy, it's unbelievable. So this book was written, you'd never think it if you started to read it. It was written in 1912. It's crazy. It would be hard to imagine. Like, when you read this book, you're just, how could this person have written this in 1912? It's unbelievable. I just like this is what gets me so excited when I read fiction. This never happens to me pretty much when I read nonfiction. But I'm just like, who is this person? It's like when I read East of Eden. I'm just like, who could have written this book? This person is so fascinating. I want to meet this person. So the introduction is written by this guy, Eric Davis, he teaches. So, hey, Paul, he teaches at Pacifica Graduate Institute. Do you know where that is? I'm guessing it's somewhere out there on the West Coast. Grogan, how about read the Bible and East of Eden? Again, why does it have to be an either or? Grog, Tim, lovingly, you are the kind of person, you are an irreligious person, or a non-religious person who loves to live in divided man either or land, you're very binary. There's tons of religious people who love to live in either or land. Guess what? Doesn't work. It's unlivable. Okay. So this introduction by Eric Davis, who teaches at Pacifica University. Well, first, let's read this. Let's read about Eric Davis. So he's an author, teacher, and award-winning journalist based in San Francisco. Oh, he's in San Francisco. His publications include, so this is related to drugs. His publications include High Weirdness, Drugs, Esoterica, and Visionary Experiences in the 70s. How awesome. And then I want to get this book, and the cult classic, Technosis, Myth, Magic, and Mysticism in the Age of Information. How cool does that book sound? Oh my gosh. Oh my goodness. Davis earned his PhD in religious studies from Rice University and currently teaches at Pacifica Graduate Institute. He writes the Substack publication Burning Shore and has completed a history of LSD blotter art for the MIT Press. How related is that to Sam's video? Synchronicities. Is this a synchronicity? Is it random? I wasn't planning on even talking about this. Is God real? All right. Now let's read about William Hope Hodgson. So he's an English poet, sailor, bodybuilder, and weird fiction pioneer whose horror, fantastic, and proto-science fiction novels, and then it listens, in addition to the Nightland, include a bunch of things. He also wrote stories in the Sargasso Sea series, the Captain Galt series, and a series about the occult detective Karnacki. He has a series about an occult detective. Like, I want to read that. That's so awesome. That's so awesome. It's like True Detective, but with more paranormal occultism. Because True Detective talks about all this stuff, but it just barely touches toward the supernatural. Like, it's obviously going on in there. True Detective is a modern work of fiction. It's like the series that I love, Evil, which I think is on Netflix. There's a show on Evil on Netflix called Evil, which I think is originally a US or a USA series, which most people probably don't even know what that is anymore. Is that even a TV network anymore? And it's about, the three main characters are, one is an atheist detective, attorney person, and then there is a priest, this enormous mountain of a man priest. He's this huge black jack dude who's becoming a priest. And then there is an Islamic scientific atheist guy, and what they do is they work for the Catholic Church researching exorcism and paranormal instances for the Catholic Church to validate or to determine their validity. And it goes into night terrors and demonic experiences. It's so good. Oh my gosh, it's so good. What's up, Hezzy? What up? Cassandra, no, but I have that book, and I was considering reading it for this thing because I bought a lot of Steinbeck, because after I read East of Eden, I'm just like, this guy he's now part of my heart. I have integrated him into my world. Okay, we're going to read the first page from the introduction, and then somehow we're going to come back to Sam. And this is did I learn the weave from our 47th, our 45th, and our 47th president, or did he learn it from me? Does Donald Trump watch Luke's live streams, and is that where he learned to do the weave? Who knows? So, introduction, Horror So Wondrous. If you are encountering William Hope Hodgson's, I'm going to just cover my face, the Nightland for the first time, you may feel a bit, I got to do it over here so you can, I don't want to lose my page though. Sorry. Because I got to talk into my mic. If you are encountering William Hope Hodgson's The Nightland for the first time, you may feel a bit like an angler who drags a bizarre and horrible fish out of the deep, something that rings no bells of recognition. a nightmare romance set in the far-flung future and written in a self-consciously antique dialect. The Nightland might be a mad poet's prophecy from the 18th century or a labored metagenre workout from the 21st. What sort of chimera is this? Don't we love the chimeras? Is this as archaic as it seems? Is it even edible? Faced with such a literary monster whose flaws somehow intensify its uncanny luster, we inevitably grope, we pinholers, for classifications. Right, T-Grog, don't we? We inevitably grope, pinholers, for classifications, for the reassuring schemas of genre, epoch, style. When Lynn Carter reissued Hodgson's book in the 2 paperback volumes as part of the Ballantyne's remarkable adult fantasy series in the 1970s, the work was presented as fantasy. The covers were Boschian nightscapes, and C.S. Lewis was quoted on the very first page, comparing Hodgson's tale to fantasy classics by William Beckford, George MacDonald, E.R. Edison, J.R.R. Tolkien, and Mervyn Peake. Peck? Is it Mervyn Peck? And in a deep spiritual sense, The Nightland is a fantasy of this old, parenthesis modern school, at once aware of and nostalgically, even medievally removed from the contemporary world where its readers live. It's just so good. Not Deepak. No Deepak. Deepak. Yeah. Mervyn Peck. Peak. Peake. I don't know how to say that. So this book is super good. Oh, I was gonna read. Back to the Weave. What was I gonna read from? Because guess what this book said? Number one, 2 things. C.S. Lewis was clearly hugely influenced by this book because there's a scene in it where I almost guarantee the way that he describes the landscape in Malcondra in Out of the Silent Planet was taken from this, almost assuredly. I don't know. I would be very surprised if it wasn't unconsciously taken from this, or I mean, it's just so much the same. It's unbelievable. And what page was it on? I took a screenshot of it. This is the thing, is I'll go and read the book, and then I don't have a pen in my notepad. And so instead of writing down notes so I can find it for my book club, I take a screenshot of it. Okay. It's 133. Here we go. I'm going to read one more page, and then we'll go back to Sam. Now there is one matter which shall seem but a small and natural occurring unto you, yet was strong upon me in that time. And this thing was that I did begin now to see the Nightland from the new outlooking of my distance from the mighty pyramid. And it was as that a man of this day did go from the earth to travel among the stars, and lo, should he not find them to shift upon his vision? So that the great bear and this and that shaping of the star clusterings should make a new order, as he did wander onwards, and so should he find that there was naught that was truly fixed, as he did before them think, but all to alter according unto the place whence the looking. And this thing shall be plain to you, though no thought be put to the matter, for it is of an evident verity that doth need no argument to expound, and so shall you have memory of me, there a wanderer among the strange shapings and wonders of that grim land. So, whatever. It's antique language, but it's that depending on your perspective, what you see changes. Depending on where you're standing, things look differently to you. Weird. It's as if objectivity is a myth of the magical incantations of rationality in our modern world. Okay. So I'll open this up because pretty soon I'm going to have to go to the bathroom and move on with my life. But I will open this up and we can talk about Divided Man and Sam and whatever. Paul can come on here and defend himself and his less than George MacDonald definition of what it means to be a Christian. Almond Tree can come roll. I can look at comments. Let's see. So Noah says the mustache helps because it gives a focal point for our attention that helps the masses concentrate. I don't know what else you can concentrate on. Boogers. Hezi helped me out with boogers one day. PVK's here doing dishes, working in his kitchen, shuffling around. Pick up your feet, PVK. That's what my father told me.
I'm an old man.
I would walk around. That was one of my dad's pet peeves. He would always say that. He'd just like, pick up your feet.
Academy of Silly Walks.
Oh my goodness.
It's an old man joke.
What are we? I barely know what that mewing. Is that like when you say you're supposed to say mew, mew, mew a bunch because it like strengthens your facial fixtures and gives you like a better, I don't know.
Really? I'd never heard of that.
I barely pay attention to these things. I hear these things somewhat because it's ridiculous. Yes. Look at this guy.
Hey, good. Someone to interpret, finally. The Pauline commandment with respect to speaking in tongues may be achieved.
You know what? What's funny about that is Jess and I were just communicating the other day on Signal, and Jess has been reading. You've been reading Gerard. And he like recounted something that Gerard said, and he was reading it because Gerard was explaining something and then anticipating pushbacks and then talking against the anticipated pushbacks and saying people won't understand it because of this. And he was like, you know who Gerard sounds like? Luke. He sounds a lot like Luke. And I was like, oh man, that makes me happy.
I think of anyone I've ever read, like Luke sounds the most like Gerard. Wow. It's hilarious.
Well, it's not bad company.
No. Oh, there went Noah. I was going to talk about is the upcoming Northwestuary. The little one. Hey, there's Chad.
He's going to be back. He's back. He had to.
Chadley.
Hi.
Hi, friends. All my friends are here.
All
of my friends are here, Neil. All of them.
I'm glad I made Neil. It in.
Just kidding. Okay, so
I didn't understand the point of anything that you read to us, Luke.
You don't understand the
point? Come
on.
I didn't get it at all.
That's hilarious. That's why you don't clip me, is because you don't understand me. Jess, interpret.
I can explain this real quick.
Okay.
This kind of goes to Esther Meek's whole thing about like this knowing with thing. So the reason why Paul can't understand it is because he doesn't have the witness to get the knowing that you have with your witness. So that's all.
Part of that is true. PVK, truly, I think if you gave me the attention that you give Jonathan Peugeot, you would understand me. Actually. I'm serious.
I've probably listened to you as much as I've listened to Jonathan Peugeot.
Well,
but you even watch Worldly News? Like, come on.
Worldly News was great. I loved it.
Have you paid attention, though? You can be present and not be paying attention. We all know this.
True.
Is that like attentional proprioception or something?
I don't know. Sometimes, Chad, your tile setting working man profundity sometimes escapes me.
But look at that awesome tile. That looks awesome.
Good.
My wife would kill to have tile like that.
Yes. You don't have to chill. Just pay me. It's cool. Anyways, all right. Great job, Luke. Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for watching the Worldly News. We got a 30 minutes episode 2 coming up today, as well as the conversation that Jeff and Neil and I had this morning. And Noah, I love you. Jess, you're gosh darn gorgeous. And Alan, close your eyes. They're too revealing. Bye.
Bye, Chad. What's up with his audio all the time? It sounds like he's constantly being
Chad,
auto-tuned.
some rich corner listening in person who loves to donate things should buy Chad like the best Bluetooth headset ever. That's what should happen.
Is Hezi driving for Uber now? That's what I want to
think
know.
so. It's a part-time job. He needs the money.
Unfortunately, since my move, I have now a commute back and forth to work in Jerusalem. So this is my new life right now.
How's traffic in Jerusalem?
Horrible.
I would imagine, because traffic in any city. Yeah, any pre-car city is terrible.
Correct. And like Jerusalem is just layers upon layers upon layers, and like every Wednesday you find like another like old ruin or archaeological site, so you can't build there and you can't build here, so they just keep on dropping roundabouts everywhere. It's a real disaster. Also, I mean, it compounds. Student drivers, the fact that like everyone and his sister have to drive, like every time someone goes to school, it has to be a whole family reunion. Everyone in the family has to drop off the kid. They're all driving their cars. It gets intense.
Well, it's almost like America just kind of, I mean, Hezi, you and I got to talk sometime. I want to have a lot more conversation with you, because I think this whole Zionism thing just fascinates me. And
I also
just trying to get
let's talk about more about you and me time on Luke's stream. I think that's going to be very productive. Luke, can you just schedule in time? Let's just schedule. Luke, if you don't mind scheduling time for me and Paul to speak, thanks.
And we'll take all the stuff that you and I say on Luke's stream, and I'll bring it all to my channel and completely cut Luke out.
There you go. Ideally, put a picture of Neil. That'll really do the job. But yes, Sir Paul, I'll be glad to speak with you at your community.
All right. I'll send you a send me an email. I don't know if I have your email address.
Luke, I also don't understand what you're reading. Can you recap and give us like a little more?
Well, that's interesting, because that's the bit that I wanted to talk to him a little bit about, because he was also talking about psychedelics, and that like when people are laughing at something, and he said, well, maybe it's not a yes or no, where as to whether or not it's profound. Maybe there are things that are profound, and I'm wondering about the objective versus the subjective. Whereas one of the things that drugs does is it emphasizes the feeling over its relationship. Like it's almost like disincarnation. Because there's a joke, but the joke is not related to what's really happening. It's like only a joke within the mind, not a joke incarnate. It's actually not incarnate, it's disincarnated.
But is that smuggling nominalism?
Shut up, Luke. I got to clip what Dave just said, and I got to make sure you're not in it at all.
Love it. Yeah, give him a little bit of space so he can pull that out.
Sorry, yeah. I mean, I believe in your editing skills. But I think I truly do, to bring in Nathan Jacobs, who you've been talking about recently too, I think the subjective objective thing is a little bit of, it's like a indirect way to go with the nominalism realism thing. It's like the subjective isn't real. It's not. That's why subjective objective are bad categories. That's why I talk about personalism, or McMo, riffing on Kierkegaard, would talk about radical subjectivism. It's the hard problem of all perception. You're not going to get away from it. The subjective objective divide is bad.
Right, but there you can get, like, if I push my eyes, I can get which I don't know why I know this, but if I push my eyes the right way, I can make false things appear in my eyes. Right? I can see lights and certain things that if I mess with my eyes, I can do that. And I've had dreams where I've written a line of poetry, immediately wake up, go to write that line, and realize it was the feeling of profundity, not profundity itself. Like there was nothing actually there. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm just disturbed because there's a. Can you see this? Where is he? Can you see that squirrel sitting on the top of my fence out there? He's just sitting there, like huddled together, holding his paws, just staring at me.
All I want right now is for that not to be real and for you just to be hallucinating to make my point. That's all I want.
That's part of the reason why I've never been interested in doing drugs a little bit. Like I'm curious in a lot of things with the high openness, but I'm not that interested. I'm like my general waking state is borderline hallucination.
I just have to let you know, Luke, that I'm now streaming this to my channel. So you've actually made it to my channel. But
that's so
the
nice.
reason I'm
but
doing
all
it is,
the only thing streamed is him talking about a squirrel. It's even better.
Yeah, for sure. Hezi, I'm trying to add you, but I don't know. There's no video.
But Dave Busatil's point, I think, really connected with me in terms of
course it
did. I sort of immediately connected it with Gnosticism. That there's sort of a correlation between a psychedelic perspective and a Gnostic perspective, because I mean psychedelics are quite connected, let's say, to dream states. And the irony about dream states is they are not connected to our. I mean, we are physically immobilized and cut off from a lot of sense perception in dreaming.
So yeah, but like even that, I'm gonna try to shut up and let other people talk a bunch. But even that, like a dream, that is you're cut off from the five senses, sense perception. But you could say the same thing about psychedelics. Is that all illusion? Is that all not real? Are dreams not real?
Well,
I don't think you're gonna go there.
I wouldn't say they're not real. That's way too categorical. But figuring out their unrealness is important.
For me, I believe dreams and psychedelics are a form of death, and that there's a kind of death that is regenerative, resurrective death, and there's a kind of death that leads to the second death, right? And I would connect that even with fasting as well, right? Even the way that we understand some psychedelics to work is that in some situations, it's not that it turns on parts of your brain. It sometimes turns off the parts of your brain that dysregulate. So it actually is killing part of you. And that death is actually the thing that brings things forward.
Well, Matthew Peugeot's his most recent long video, talked a lot about sleep and death, and I thought that was really helpful and perceptive.
It's all about renewal.
Yes, it's sort of a twin side there.
In the Talmud, we say that a 1/60th of a dream is considered prophecy. And when we wake up every morning, we say, "Thank you, God, for returning my soul." And there's a sense where, the reality we see in front of us is actually, well, not the reality, what we see in front of us day to day when we are conscious, that potentially is the facade. And when we sleep, when we allow it in the subconscious, sort of in the tohu vavohu, there could be new creations that could be happening there once you start playing with these things without any rules, right? Like sort of in I'm just borrowing a term, but when a superposition, when I'm looking at it, right, then that observation is happening. But when before I observe it, though, it could be either or. And I think that either or space does allow for the initiated or one that's properly oriented to then start making shape of the things he's seeing.
Yes, this is where we need Steven to come in here and talk about. I was recently talking to Steven D20, who's he's in a series of 3 chats on Christian Baxter's channel, but he's in the chats here somewhere. And we were talking about a little privately about Joe Rogan's conversation with who's the physicist? Brian Cox, and they were talking about black holes. And black holes, there's a 10-minute clip where they talk about black holes and this renewed interest in black holes, because we don't really know what happens across black holes. It's an information death. The bottom line is, like he was saying, we could be sitting in this room having this conversation and cross an event horizon, and for us nothing could change, but from the outside it would be black, nothing. There's no information getting past. Well, I've been thinking about black holes and death and information and knowing and what all those things mean. It's fascinating stuff.
I'm as people know, I have this ridiculous mustache because I'm in the middle of a play. And about 2 weeks before the show, I started getting nervous and I started having dreams of the play, right? And I can't remember where they did a study on it, where they found that people who had dreams about whatever they were trying to process those things faster. So I think it was related to, if I have it right, it was people who know how to lucid dream who are in a study of how quickly they could solve the puzzles faster if they did them in their dreams as well. Which is interesting because when I was in the dream state, if it came to, okay, say a line from the show, I couldn't say any individual line of the play. It's like the idea of the play was there, but nothing specific. I couldn't pull out any specific line and say it. It was like the sensation of it.
There's that one study with basketball players where they have like one group that goes and shoots free throws for an hour a day or whatever it was. And then they had a second group that only visualized doing the free throws for an hour a day. And then I forget how long it went on, but anyway, came back and the people doing the visualization actually outperformed were improved at a better rate than the ones who were just going and doing the actual shooting the free throws.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. It was a slight increase, but it was noticeable.
Well, that gets into Polyani, which I know Luke loves. I'm trying to give you the stage here, Luke. I'm trying to give you the stage. I know you've been frustrated by not having the big stage, and there Jess got some talk time. So,
No, what's funny, this has been helpful for me. It's why, like, is it good or bad? It's the Chinese farmer. Because it's funny, because like Esther Meek comes on, and you talk about Polanyi. I'm pretty sure I'm the first one in the corner to talk about Esther Meek and Polanyi. I used to talk about Polanyi all the time and subsidiary focal integration. And then Esther Meek is on. But here's the thing that's good about it. It's good. Do I really believe in personal relational ontology and that do I really care about the truth of things being expanded, or do I care that I'm acknowledged that I am the one who gave it? Like, is it really about my ego, or is it really about just people living into the reality of the truth? Well, I think a lot of times I care more about my ego. So I'm glad that you don't highlight me. Don't highlight me. Clip David. It's good.
Okay, sorry, just because T-Grog's thing is up right now. Oh, and so you threw it away.
Sorry, I'll put it back. I like that one. It's basically Origin.
So this is the thing about psychedelic experiences. Again, it's people used to think that when you did something like DMT, that it was artificially turning on the parts of your brain that see things. It's not the case. Psychedelics actually turn off the parts of your brain that are constantly interacting with each other. They kill you a little. And people who have near-death experiences don't see black. That's not what happens as your brain turns off. As you die, you see more things and experience more things, not less.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. It's like your focal awareness in general. Like when Peterson talks about even vision, most of it's inhibitory. It's shutting things off so that you can see.
Yeah, your brain is just like shut up left side, shut up right side. Like it's constantly doing that.
yeah. Miguel Chris makes the same point.
I think Jordan Peterson once said that when you're walking down the street, basically, your mind is actually rendering things for you. Like, you're not actually seeing the buildings. It's just your mind telling you buildings are here and showing you a pattern. It's not actually what you're seeing. But I don't think we could ignore the fact that, the pineal gland itself, produces this type of chemical in your brain. And that whether it's the third eye or whether it's the phylacteries that are sitting on the location of the third eye, there are many references that are alluding to something deeper, something within that allows you to see without seeing.
Well, and that is the bad trip. Like, the source of the bad trip is that constantly you are denying things within yourself. And when you start taking psychedelics, you're unable, like, instead of having this in this closet that you've shut, that you aren't opening and aren't examining, psychedelics means you aren't able to keep that door shut. Right? And for some people,
Right.
that's the unprocessed.
Sam Harris calls this, I think in his book, Waking Up, he calls it facing, like, a bad trip is facing the mountain of shame. And that to me always sounded like something that we all should go through.
Bas Van Os wrote, I don't know if, because the comments don't necessarily go all the way over, so I don't know that Luke saw this, but he said,
I'll
Lucas
highlight it.
used ayahuasca and had these intense experiences. We picked him up and he spoke about his experiences. The next day I asked him to read the Gnostic Gospel of Philip and he had to cry. So, on my channel, I made the connection between psychedelics and Gnosticism based on David's point. But yeah, it's super interesting. By the way, this is my last day with the dog. We turn her in tomorrow, and she goes to be a working dog. Miss my baby.
It's going to be sad.
Why do you do that to yourself?
I think it's fantastic. I think it's great. I think it's
These
great
dogs
that you did that,
are
Pastor Paul.
amazing. What's that?
I said I think it's great that you did that, and the sense that there's a part of the natural world, and we see this the most with food, which is when we eat food, in a certain sense, we're elevating those particles themselves into our spirit, right? We're allowing the food itself to nurture us and to turn us as humans or as God-fearing people, and to elevate the food itself. So even with the natural world and with animals, taking an animal and nurturing it, creating a relationship with it, and then to allow it to then ascend and service a human in a certain sense is really upgrading the animal. So I think it's a tremendous privilege to do so.
There's this really good animation of it. There's no dialogue in it, and it's about Adam in the garden, and then so it's him like in the garden, and you see him like exploring and all this stuff, and then he meets Eve through it, and it's, I don't know, just all the subtleties in the animation make it very like vivid and also really great. But then they eat the fruit at the end. It's like a short. It's like 10 and 15 minutes long or something. And then, but Adam had befriended a dog in his explorations and all this stuff. He's like leaping around and like doing like Rafe Kelly stuff. And anyway, they eat the fruit and then they're cast out. There's this huge storm, lightning strikes, and they're like they're full of fear for the first time, and like they're running out of the garden into the fields and off into the unknown. And the dog is standing there like at the edge of the forest of the garden and the field and watching them go. And like at the very end, the dog's like deciding what he's going to do. He's like looking back and forth, and then he runs after to go with Adam and Eve. And I'm just like, I'm like crying. And that's how it ends, is this like relationship with the dogs and us.
beautiful.
All right, I gotta go. I'll see you guys.
All right. For those just catching it on Twitter and YouTube, this is a live stream by Luke. Luke Thompson is one of the most important people in the corner, and he streams on his own channel, Luke Thompson, although it's terribly hard to find because his name isn't unique, and Grail Country, which is a little easier to find in a big channel. And I've come to believe that basically what I've done on the internet is cultivated a sphere of extended cognition that includes these people. And Luke is a very important part of that network. And so I want everyone to see Luke and to appreciate him, because there's a little Luke inside that just doesn't feel seen or heard. So I had to say that.
This won't help. But thank you. I appreciate that, Paul. Also, I like, it's part of your whole thing that I'm following in the pattern of. It's the slow growth thing. Most people aren't going to like anything that I have to say. It's not even going to be intelligible to them. So yeah, don't come and sign up because you'll hate it.
Yeah, and subscribing is pointless on YouTube. If you haven't figured out that little subscribe button, it says some things, but it doesn't say anything that you think it should. Oh, not in the pool.
Yeah. And that's kind of to something you've said a lot, that in TLC we're using YouTube almost against itself. That really is the TLC thing. You trust the algorithm a little bit, and I mainly just check my prescriptions. Really, if I'm on YouTube, I'm basically watching corner content. I watch almost nothing else except comedy or like mild entertainment, like food shorts or something. Stuff about cars, maybe. But like information that I need for some particular use. Yeah.
So David, I want to know, following up on your comment about psychedelics and death and sleep and my connection with Gnosticism, how does YouTube fit into this? Because it is different from the sort of curated content that you'll see on Netflix or Amazon, because this is user generated content. So I've continued to sort of wonder when Amazon is going to try to rival YouTube, because I think over the long run, YouTube is going to destroy all of the other streaming services.
Yeah. So immediately what jumps out at me is, I think it was something I got from Brett Weinstein, where he was talking about color blindness and camouflage detection. You know what I'm talking about?
Uh-huh.
Is it during World War II, you'd take people who are colorblind and they would be placed to view from airplanes because they could detect camouflage better than people who saw in color. The color would be and I actually, a friend of mine had this experience. I'm Canadian, so our money is ridiculously colored. And a guy was biking with his dad, and it was in the fall, and all the leaves had changed colors, and all of a sudden his dad hits the brakes hard and picks a $50 bill up off the ground from a leaf pile, because that's the color that a $50 bill is in Canada. It's like the color of changing leaves. The sun couldn't see them because the color similarity made him was able to distract him. But the one with less information, the one whose senses were actually more dead, could see more detail. And you've talked about this, Paul, about the churn and about interaction. I very much agree with the point where there's interaction with these things. There's interaction on YouTube videos that are important the way that they aren't on Netflix. So that relationship is what makes it able to bring forward more important details. Because it's like we hit the point where there's too much to see. People talk about that for Netflix too. There's too much to watch. What am I going to watch? What is relevant? And relevance realization is killing everything. It is death. And YouTube gives a sense of relevance realization that I think Netflix doesn't. Yeah, absolutely. It's death again, Jason. Yeah. It's death again, not fasting. Fasting is a form of death, not the other way around.
And that strikes me, you know, what Luke just said, because I got to keep pointing to Luke. Sorry, Luke.
Yeah.
Well, Luke just said, I've noticed the same thing. So I get up this morning and of course I'm doing a whole bunch of things. And then my wife goes to work and it's time to empty the dishwasher and exercise the dog and do some of these things. And YouTube has so much content there for me, but because Luke is streaming, it's like, that's it. That's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to pare all this down and hear about how Luke is a boy toy for his wife. And it's just bang right there.
That's okay. Luke, don't be insulted by this, okay? I have to say something that I don't mean is insulting. The beginning of your videos, I really like talking to you. I sometimes have no idea what the hell you're getting at the beginning of your video. Okay? And I will be on YouTube watching something I fully understand and I'm getting and I'm like energized by, and I will turn that off to listen to you confuse me because I plan on engaging with you. And I get so much out of the engagement and what you're like, where you guide the conversation, that I don't get out of a video that whatever. I honestly, I don't mean that as an insult.
No,
you know
it's not. It's not. Okay, here's the thing. So I think next, I was going to say this to you. I said it in a comment. I don't know if you saw this, but so the Midwest touring next year, I'm planning on being there. I think my whole family's going to go, actually. They're not all going to go to the conference, but they're all going to come to Chicago. And Sherry, God bless you. I think this is fantastic.
Sherry, thank you. I'm very proud of that joke.
I don't even think she's kidding. But I think part of that, like when I was saying earlier that I don't need psychedelics, I'm not kidding. I think I'm basically there most of the time. I think that I am seeing connections all over the place that I think are unintelligible to most people. I think that's really true. And it's no different. I mean, I'm very used to it. My wife has no idea what I'm talking about. Whenever I talk about the stuff, we don't talk about this stuff. But nobody does. It's very rare. Jess, there's a few people. Jess, I think, knows what I'm talking about. Sherry knows what I'm talking about most of the time. It's uncommon. But one of the things is, this is part of the reason, though, this is the last thing I'll say, that I like fiction versus nonfiction. It's like reading Faulkner or reading Lilith or reading Loris or something, or like reading this book. If you try to come to this book and read it in a left-brained analytical way, you won't be able to read it. You'll give up. You have to just participate in it and let it wash over you. It's like everybody saying, when Peugeot started talking, nobody knew what he was talking about. You started to know what he was talking about through participation.
Oh, yeah. That goes exactly to the book you sent me, Luke.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's participating. The only way to understand. It's the book that the movie Signal. Is that the movie name? Signal.
No. What is the dumb movie? The one with the aliens and coming down. Arrival. Yes.
Arrival. Yeah. And how like you can't build a language if you don't have a common reference point. But if I can jump in on something David was just talking about, which is he was talking about the turning on and off parts of your your perception or knowledge, and like in terms of if you are colorblind, that's a skill by itself. Having less information is actually a benefit.
Yep.
And talking about, well, that immediately just creates the meta of, oh, well, I would just in the future we'll have brains that can turn on and off context dependently. But it's like that just creates another realm of wisdom to be, because you can have colorblind people and not colorblind people today, but in the future it'd be like, oh, we can just engineer people to turn on and off their colorblindness. Right. But it's like that takes another form of relationships with, you have to have the wisdom to know when to turn on and off your colorblindness. And I don't know if I don't know what the thesis I'm getting at is, but it's funny. Just today I was talking to my dad about, I'm just throwing it out there of like moving to Tennessee and just like, that might be a good place and could see some good things coming out of that. And it's funny because he's like, well, Alan, you already have this church community. Like, you're already doing the thing that you say that you want to go to Tennessee to help you with. But I'm like, but I didn't get where I am now by locking in where I was previously. Like, if I had locked into where I was 5 years ago, I wouldn't be the person I am now and have the beliefs and parameters that I have now that I'm trying to optimize. And those parameters will change again in the next 5 years. So there's a wisdom to, and I know my dad's doing this in a loving way, so I don't mean to, like, he wants me to be near him, and we all live in, the Northeast right now. But it's like this idea of like, well, just lock in and optimize where you are. You have a great church. You have all these things you want. You have them right now, and just optimize. I'm like, yeah, but the following of that spirit that got me where I am now took all the changes, took me being open to changing and becoming more wise to where I am now. Yeah. So like, I know this is loose, but it's just this idea of like, you have to develop. It's not just, oh, you'll have a brain that can be colorblind or not colorblind. It's you developing the wisdom to know when to be colorblind and when not to be colorblind. And that's just as important as the skill itself, just as important as seeing colors and not seeing colors. But
I think there's so much to what you're saying. And Jan God just made a comment that's connected with what you're saying is hitting me with a bunch of ideas where now we have noise canceling headphones because people can't, like, they're unable to focus with the noises going on. Right. And we now have glasses that filter out forms of light. It's, again, exactly what you're saying. We're creating means of death, means of fasting. And you'll see women will, like, especially women on my social media feed, will say, I'm going off social media, right? What they're saying is, I'm too distracted. If I have all these things on at once, it's too much. I'm spread too thin, and I'm not able to be healthy and to focus and to grow. And I'm relating all of this to the day of the Lord, which Paul has been talking about a bit recently. And in my mind, the day of the Lord, if you're talking in Jewish context, the day is Yom Kippur. So the day of the Lord, I think, is connected to Yom Kippur. That this is a much longer conversation, which I won't get into. But it's a day of fasting, a day where you afflict yourself. And it's also the day that atonement occurs. And it's also the day that you announce the freedom of all the slaves in the year of Jubilee. The year of Jubilee was announced at the end of the day of fasting, of affliction. You afflict, but the purpose of the affliction is like a friend of mine right now is getting chemotherapy. Chemotherapy and radiation is fire and disease. It kills you with the belief that the thing that it doesn't kill is the part of you that lives on and is healthy. You kill the bad, you don't kill the good, right? But all of my friend is experiencing the chemotherapy. All of my, right? Like, you don't get to pick. You take in all of this stuff, and it's like the book of Revelation. You afflict, you kill, but the purpose is resurrection. The purpose is the thing that it doesn't kill.
Yeah, but I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
But the point I'd like to add to that is you have to know you get a doctor to tell you when to use chemotherapy. You don't just say like, oh, I'm going to take my chemotherapy pill this morning. It's like, Why is your hair falling
Right.
out and your teeth falling out? It's like, oh, well, I just take a little chemotherapy every. Yeah. PVK, if you had more
Yeah.
wisdom, you'd have more hair. The Lord counts the number of hairs on your head, and you've made his job very easy. PVK. But yeah, sorry, just that point of like, yeah, the death. But if you want to integrate more, you also need to know when to die a little, like and when to not die a little, when to grow and when to reap.
But that's part of the liturgical faith too, is Yom Kippur is once a year. It's like, whatever you're doing, I don't care what you're going through right now, you must at least die once a year. You got to at least fast that one day. Paul, what are your thoughts on some of that stuff? Because I was kind of with the Day of the Lord bits that you've been talking about, trying to connect with that.
No, I think you're right. And, one of the things that I've thought about a lot with respect to the Day of the Lord, that it's always scalable. It's always scaling, because the Day of the Lord comes to Israel with the destruction of the temple. It comes to Israel with the destruction both times. But life is sort of this pre-echo of the Day of the Lord, and life is also sort of a pre-echo of death. What do I mean by a pre-echo? I mean, with an echo, you go into a cave, you clap your hand, and you hear it reverberate in diminishing measures. But what happens with eschatology is that history is reversed. We are pulled into the future. And so all of this, both carnage and release, is sort of the same thing. And, one of the things that I made that little membership video, $3 a month membership's not a lot to ask for, a little grift there. $7 for no ads, get to see Peugeot and Vervaeke right away. Noticing again just the lamentations out in the world over the election of Trump again. It's just revelatory. And just in terms of these are people having existential crises over this. And so for a lot of people, the re-election of Donald Trump is the Day of the Lord. And again, that goes both ways. Other people are, couldn't be happier. And I think, David, your connection with death is vital, because the Day of the Lord as death, or as a death, or as death of a world, or as death of an envisioned world. I mean, that's the most common manifestation of the Day of the Lord, that we all have it and we all know it. And for years I've said, the Day of the Lord is when the police officer comes to your door and says there's been an accident, or when the doctor comes to you and says you have cancer, or when your boss comes to you and says you're no longer needed here. And then connecting it, I think, to what's going on with psychedelics, and then connecting that psychedelic thing now with there's a great video that I discovered after I made the video that I released this morning with David Brooks and James Davison Hunter. And of course, you have all this digital fasting going on, and you have Jonathan Haidt, and you have Andy Crouch, who's written a lot on this. And so, you have an hour of fasting every day. You have a day of fasting every week. You have a digital fasting. You have a month of digital fasting every year. And again, I think, these things are sort of lining up for us. And I never was able to sort of put psychedelics into that series, but your observation just made it click for me, because, and also the fact that we just mentioned that McGill, Kristen Peterson, and others have both made the comment that we think, I think in the modern world, we see our brains as an access point to the real world. And so I'm sitting outside. I've got my dog right here. I've got beautiful trees that are finally changing colors here in Sacramento. And I think I'm not going to see these things without my brain and my eyes and so on and so forth. But, they sort of reverse it and note that actually what we do as a brain is filter. And that then connected with your observation, David, that the question of what exactly we are doing here, and the need of this filter, because the irony also with the internet is all of this machinery that you have to connect up to the internet. Obviously you have the Wi-Fi signal, you have the router, you have all of this, but so much of this browser software is a filter, because if that's what IP packets are, it takes all of this stuff and makes it into tiny little components. And again, we tend to think of it as access, but this is one of the things that I learned years ago, and I was trying to get my mind around search engines. What are search engines? Search engines are filters. They're not my dog fetching so much. They're filtering this mass. And so it's very much a reversal of a lot of assumptions.
And this is a problem that people have with both capitalism and with algorithms, is that they reveal what people want. That's the biggest problem. Capitalism is great if you're moral. Democracy is great if you're moral, right? And what YouTube is going to recommend to you, if you are a deeply moral person, is going to be more and more of that, right? The filter will get better and give you things that are very interesting and very uplifting. But if you are distracted by your lower nature, that's a simple way of saying that, then, I mean, even the language we use is getting turned on, right? If you're turned on by too many things, right, the algorithm is going to feed you that.
Yeah.
And you're not going to be dead enough. You're going to be too turned on.
And that gets into the sacred. So, the reason I initiated that conversation with Vervaeke and Peugeot was I implicitly, when I listen to people in excitement talking about the sacred, they think it's going to be the Disneyland filters, and Disneyland is a certain kind of filter. And part of the reason I really wanted Peugeot in there was exactly what he did in that clip I posted last night, which is that Peugeot's immediately going to see and very well articulate that, exactly what C.S. Lewis articulates until we have faces, that holy places are dark places because they're filters. And so you're going to get this question of holiness, which is, and again, the Hebrew scriptures are all over this. It's terrifying. I mean, Moses asks for access, and the Lord says, what you're going to need is a filter. In order for you to have the part from me that you want from me, I'm going to put you in the cleft of the rock, and I'm going to walk behind you, or again, that's really tricky. And I'm going to announce my name. And of course,
we are Christians, and everyone here is. I'm sorry, Chezi, but there's an idea that in order for God to communicate to us, it must be the Lamb who dies before the foundations of the world. In order for God to be for him to be experienced, he can't be infinite. I can't experience the infinite. I can only experience the finite. So in Judaism, there's an idea that there's a contraction that occurs by God in order for him to create the world, right? It needs to be one thing instead of everything. It needs to be one place instead of no place, right? And so in order for God to even interact with us, the only God that we can interact with is the God that dies a little.
Yeah.
But don't you think that
necessary.
everything is present in all things? This is everything in a grain of sand.
No, well, okay. I mean, to some extent, but there also must be distinction.
That's the distinction without division.
I don't know if I would say not division.
I am going to turn off here, and when I turn off, my world, my little filter into the world to my channel and to Twitter turns off. But
Oh no! Oh no! Everyone, quick, like and subscribe at my channel.
So
please.
Here, if you want to continue or you want to jump into the conversation or if you want to continue to watch the conversation,
you don't.
Either go to Grail Country or Luke Thompson. All right, Luke is now worried because you're exactly right to worry, Luke, because once you take the level up, it's like, oh, the filter isn't working so good. And now I have to. So, yep, for a bunch of you, the stream is going to end, but go to Grail Country or Luke Thompson and you can continue the conversation. Carry on. Sorry to interrupt. I will follow watching.
The
right.
The that limiting, it just reminded me of what PVK has been saying with Dawkins bringing up the moon landing all the time, of like he's trying to create this like unlimited thing that we can all agree is like a miracle, or not, you know, he wouldn't use that language, but is like a revelation of power. It's like if you use science, you get to go to the moon, and that proves it. But he's just doing that. Sorry, continue.
There's a bit that came to me yesterday, which is going to the moon is ascending. If you used ancient wording, is ascending into heaven. What is the thing that he uses as an example of how great science is that it can help us ascend into heaven. Yeah.
But it's the materialist.
What are we talking
like
about?
It's of course the materialist, but ironically, if you were a materialist, it would say, you would just actually say, well, who cares? Like, where's the value? Where
right.
You know, like, okay, these
the
molecules,
moon is dead. There's nothing on the moon, and we can't survive there.
Yeah, and also the atoms we are made up of are dead. So it's like, you know, consciousness is just an emanation from, you know, the molecules. So it's like, there's no place to say that was good. There's no place from which you can say, oh, it's good that we went to the moon. But of course, he's picking that because in his like metaphysics, it's like expressing power through science is good. Expressing like some sort of accomplishment, something you couldn't do previously, use science and then make it achievable, and then doing that to the like highest degree, to the you know, the hardest problem, that's a proof of goodness. And it's like, yeah, you're just re-expressing ascending into heaven, you know, like you're just re-expressing bringing heaven to earth and earth to heaven, you know.
Space isn't heaven, okay? Because out in space, it's actually infinite worlds of possibility. Oh, wait, okay. Right? It's like, what language can we use of space before it starts sounding like heaven again? Right? Yeah. It's infinite, always expanding, all this stuff.
So I'm gonna jump in here real quick to kind of, because I was hearing you guys' conversation earlier, and I thought it was very interesting. And the thing about science is that even though it's, for some people it's the all be all to reality, it's still very limited, and it's been growing. And there's a lot of stuff we didn't even know existed, like viruses, and sound is invisible, but we can record it. That's something that we wouldn't able to do, you know, recording a photograph. That's, you know, go back 400 years ago, photographs didn't exist. How do you capture reality? You know what I mean? You can capture somebody that has passed away, but in a photograph, you know, you can see what they look like. But what I'm saying, this is science that didn't exist, but now exists. But the scientists think that they know all there is to know. And they're like, I know everything. It's like, do you really? And so I'm going to say this as far as what Paul was saying about in Christianity, you know, you guys were talking about filters and seeing things differently. You guys mentioned dream world, how that's a little bit different. So the echo in reverse, how we're pulled not we're pulled into the future, and that's it's a ridiculous notion to us that can't travel from the future to the past, to the past to the future, because we're limited. It's just because we're limited, just like science was limited and didn't know viruses and that you could record sound. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And the entity that's outside of physics knows of a world far more different than ours. And like I said, going back to the scriptures, when they in the Old Testament, when it mentions that, if praise that God allows this other person to see what this person sees, and he sees the angels. So there's a world we don't see that exists, but doesn't exist. So I'm going to pin it here and I'm going to try to see if I can merge these notions. Nathan Jacobs was mentioning, he's mentioning about the nominal and about the how the ghosts, and for the Halloween, October, he mentioned weird ideas in history or thoughts. So the story of Emily Rose is based on a real story, and I saw the movie a long time ago, before I started working in a psychiatric hospital. So when I heard the story, it felt different to me. So I started looking into it, and long story short, this lady was treated in a mental hospital by psychiatrists with the medicine of the day, with antipsychotics and antidepressants, and she was treated for like 5 years, I believe, and they weren't able to help her. And that's when they, because they were, there was no hope. That's when they brought in the exorcist, and the exorcist at times didn't want to engage. But long story short, the mystery, in my opinion, of that story is that psychiatry and modern medicine at that time couldn't help her, and the religious folk couldn't help her either, because she ended up dying. And as a matter of fact, they tried to they brought charges against the priests. So to tie this together, as far as the things that exist yet we can't see, just like viruses, we couldn't see the bacteria, but now we kind of, with new technology, we can see it. Before we couldn't record sound, even though it's invisible, but you can actually record it, which is crazy, right? This stream is going out to multiple places at once through an invisible. Don't ask me how this all works. I couldn't explain these technologies to somebody that lived 800 years ago. First of all, 800 years ago, America didn't even exist. So, like I said, the pace of our change and of what we don't know has changed so much. And I still believe that we're still so very limited in what we know.
The last, sorry, Paul, the last like 2-3 episodes of the Nathan Jacob podcast has been all about Halloween topics. So it's like a random Q&A kind of stuff. But he also is talking to like exorcists and stuff to try to get in like an entry point to some of that stuff. I gotta go. I'm gonna leave. I'm streaming in an hour and a half as well. We've got Bible study today. So
yeah, sorry, I'm probably gonna wrap it up too. Alex, I feel like, do are you seeking a response to your thing, or were you do you feel like we dropped the ball on your comment?
No, that's that. Whatever, this is you guys' thing. I'm the newest one here. I'm just you know what I mean. So whatever you think is best, if you want to comment, you can. It's just the thing that I've seen, because I've seen the world differently. As I already have gray hair, so as time goes by and think the things that I learned, I might read a book that I read 10 years ago, and it's way different to me.
Yeah.
And it's not because the book changed, it's me that changed. But I still think like I'm very limited as far as the true sense of reality, like the reality of all realities. Now we have to bring in, God into the mix. But like I said, I think I still feel like I'm very limited into all that I know. And as far as the spiritual, and when people hear voices and prophetic dreams, all that
Yeah.
stuff is like, how do you try to make sense of some of that stuff?
Yeah, all that stuff's exciting though. The fact that we don't know everything, it's I think so. I'll wrap it up with some Peter Rollins, but I love Peter Rollins, and he talks about grace is the freedom from the libidinal pursuit of the lack. And the lack is the thing that promises to make you whole and complete. But really, being whole and complete is stasis. Like there's no being in that. There's no becoming. There's no transformation. There's no growth. It's sitting on clouds in the sky playing harps, but except there's no harps and there's no sitting. It's just absolute stasis. And so the fact that we don't know everything to me is good. It's an encouragement. It allows for wonder and awe and creativity and growth. And so, and I agree very much to your point. So this is a little bit of a plug for a combo that will come out on Randos United. I spoke with a wonderful gentleman the other day, Samuel, and it's going to come out on Randos United. Jeff's going to have it up sometime soon. And it's just a random conversation about a bunch of things, but something that he said in there which reminded me of what you said about reading a book and then having it be different years later when you reread it, is he just had this short little line where he said, text needs a context. And that's a really succinct way, I think, to say a lot. So anyhow, thanks everybody for coming. Thanks, Alex. Until next time, see y'all guys. And I'm gonna end the stream. Have a good day.